Hello everyone, I'm Rick Janzen. Welcome to my fly bench. Now, have you ever been on a lake in the early summer days when the major fly hatches are over? Chironomids, mayflies, caddisflies have come and gone. Rises are desultory, not enough action anywhere to cause you to pull up anchors and move? My answer to that question is usually the dragonfly nymph. It's a big mouthful, and big trout are attracted and usually interested if they catch one out in the open. My requirements for a pattern for dragonfly is you have to be able to fish it really close to the bottom, right in the weeds. So my pattern needs to be weedless and float well. So let's take a look at the materials you're going to need to tie my deer hair dragon. Hey everybody, as you can see, we've got a finished dragonfly nymph in there, and so I'm just going to take that one out of the vise and show you how we put this this little puppy together. So let's get it out of there, and then we'll put in our number 8 3x long shank hook. Hey, in comes the bear hook. As you can tell, it's an extra long shank hook, and that's great for building the darner. What we're doing here with this dragonfly, we're building the darner. The gomphosis is a much shorter one, and I'm going to do that in a later video with other materials. But we're building the darner darner dragonfly nymph. So I've got my 100 denier or 6/0 olive tying thread in nano silk. That was easier to do than to say, and I'm just going to tie that in here at the bend of the hook. And we'll get the tag end of that cut off. Now with the deer hair, what I like to do is cut off a tuft of it and then cut the tips off, because we don't need those in there. So I'll take that, and because we don't need to use a stacker or anything like that, because it's all going to get trimmed anyway. So I take these tips and I'll cut them off about here so that it's just blunt on the end. I give that a little trim, as you can see, because we don't need those in there. So then when I come forward of my tying thread there, I'm going to give it one loose wrap like that, and then just spin it around the hook. And then what we've got is a spun deer hair piece there, segment of our body. And then what I do is I like to come in with my either my bodkin or scissors and just freeze some of them up there so they're not bound, and then I stack it and I put my fingers, thumb and finger behind it and in front, and just push it back, as you can see. And then I'll get it out of the way there and give a wrap of thread in front of that first segment, and then we're going to just keep adding segments here. So I'm going to do that again for you. Give it a trim, and then I'm going to build up the body to about the 2/3 to 3/4 mark, up to about here, and then I'll stop to put in the legs, because I've got to have room to put in the head and the beard that I'm going to put in first, and the legs. So I'm going to do the rest without comment, and I'm going to speed it up for you so you can just see the process, and then I'll talk about it after I stop the first segment there and start to put in the legs. Okay, now that I've got the fly to where I want it on that portion of the shank of the hook there, I'm going to give it a half hitch here and pull that tight, and then take the whip finish in and give it a few wraps of the whip finish, because we're going to now give it the haircut it's required to shape the body of this fly. And I leave the thread on there, but I give it the whip finish because I'm going to be turning it around a lot. Now the secret to that deer hair body is how tight you pack it when you're pushing together on that. You want to pack it really tight, and you can feel it slide on the shank of the hook. You want to get it very, very tight. Now, just to aid in not making a huge mess, I use a little box that I put under the vise. Whoop, shook it up there. Hopefully that's still in focus. Looks like it. And now is when I come in with the scissors and we start shaving. And this is really where it's great to have a rotary vise, so you can turn the vise and leave the hook in the jaws of the vise there and keep it under control. So I come in tight over the back. Then I come in tight because you want to have that gape of the hook exposed there for a good hook setup. And you come in tight in here and cut it fairly flat, actually, underneath and on top. The sides will be curved and tapered, but the bottom and top, I want them fairly flat, as the shape of the darner is kind of flat on top and on the bottom. It's kind of almost, if you cross section it, it's almost a diamond shape in a way. And so I'm coming in there and I'm exposing the gape of that hook with the scissors and working up the sides. So I'm going to take a break from narrating here and just give it a haircut, and I'll speed this process up as well for you. Okay, now that I've got the basic shape, you can see it's somewhat torpedo shaped there. What I'm going to do is, you can always leave it this is a very naturally occurring color in many dragonfly nymphs, this mottled gray-brown, but sometimes they take on an olive hue depending on the background that they're in, sometimes brown. And so I'm going to demonstrate for you the dubbing method I use to give that some color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my nano silk here and wind it through the deer hair. This also serves the benefit of giving it a little bit of segmentation, but also really securing that body on there, because sometimes that deer hair tends to want to still spin even after tying it on, and this really locks it on there tight. And so I get that thread right to the back again, and you can see it's hinting at that segmentation a little bit. And there we go, we get it back to the tail portion of the fly. Now that body is really locked on there because I've given it that extra layer of wrap. And I use dubbing wax in a single layer of dubbing when I form a noodle on this, because I don't want it too thick, but I want it to lend it some color to help it camouflage and blend into its surroundings, which often the naturals do. So I form a very thin dubbing noodle, and I just slowly work my way back forward there to where I'll put in my silly legs, my rubber legs. So we bring that around there, and we just kind of wind it through again and add more dubbing as needed to color up and brush up this little fly. And dragonflies are often carrying around bits of debris on their bodies as well. It kind of snags up into their legs and whatnot, and it's a very natural look for them to have this kind of brushy bugginess on them, and it lends it that color that you want sometimes to do it. Very durable fly once it's tied, though it takes some effort to do, and but it gives you a fly. I've got the original ones I tied in my box back in 1980, still there. And I still use them. Turns out they're also a great smallmouth bass pattern. I've caught dozens of smallmouth bass on these, because you can put them right down into the debris and into the weeds where those bass are hanging out, right down into the structure. and they just love it. And because it's weedless, it's virtually snag free. I'm not afraid to fish it right down into the junk where the bass hang out and where the trout hang out when they're looking for this big mouthful. So I'm cutting off here olive silly legs for the legs for this pattern, and at first they're going to stick out quite wide, which isn't a problem because as I build the head there, it's going to push them back there. So I like to turn the vise for this and tie them in one side at a time, and I like to tie them in about the length of the body. And first of all, I'll get them evened out there a little bit, and there we go, about this to the bend of the hook, a little bit about the length of the body, as I said earlier. So I'll give that a loose loop, and then I'll secure that in there. And you can see they're coming out perpendicular at this point, but that's not a problem. As when I build the head, it's going to squash those back into position a little further. Besides, when you pull this through the water, when you're retrieving it and you're doing your strip-ins, these swimmerettes, as they are, will pulse back and give it very lifelike movement in the water. That's why I like them over some other materials. And so a set on this side, a pair on this side as well. Got an extra deer hair in there that I don't need. About the same length of the body. Give it a loose loop and then cinch it down. And again, they're going to pop right out like that, which I just work with as I build the head, and it tends to push them back a little bit. So there we go, we've got the legs tied in. Give it a couple more wraps to secure everything before we upright the vise. And this is where now we'll spin about two or three shanks of hair for the head. And again, I'll just do that without comment. So there's 3 hanks of hair come in there, and I see I've got a little bit more room there, right here. I'm going to want to build my thread head in there, but I think I can get one more small one in there. So I'm going to attempt to do that. Sometimes you push it too far, sometimes not far enough, and so I'm going to make the judgment call here and just give that one more hank of hair there. There we go. That should finish off my head nicely. And it looks like with squishing it back, I'll still have room to put my head in there and my moose mane legs, the beard that forms the legs of this thing. So we're going to give that a couple of turns of thread, just to bunch that deer hair back so I can do a half hitch in here and hold it in place again. Just trying to push that back, and you can see those legs are taking more rearward orientation there at this point. So I'll bring the whip finisher in. Try to pull that off by pulling the deer hair back. And I'll make sure I'm still in focus there. Okay, there we go. Alright, we've whip finished that, and this is where I like to use a curled pair of scissors to form the head. It just helps getting the arc I want on the head. And again, I'll bring my box in underneath to catch all the debris from the deer hair. And make sure, again, that I'm still in focus, all that bumping around. There you go. And just try not to cut those legs that we so carefully put in there. And I'll be spinning the vise again. Okay, at this point I'm going to bring in my moose mane legs, and those are what make this weedless. I'm just going to double check the focus here. Looking good. And so I'm using dyed gray olive moose mane for the beard, and this is what really is the magic on this fly. It keeps it weedless, allows you to drag it right across the bottom where the fish are looking for these things. So I bring in about, I don't know, about 10 moose mane hairs, And then because they are all different lengths, various lengths, I'll equalize that by pulling and restacking until I get them all fairly equal lengths. I want them to all come to past the point of the hook there, obviously, to keep it weedless. And so I get them fairly stacked even, and there we go. So we're going to bring them in here, and I'll get this box out of here, give myself some more room, and we'll give them a loose loop of the nano silk. There we go. Now we cinch that into place, and this is the magic stuff. This is the stuff that makes this fly really work. So bring my straight scissors in there and cut the tag ends of that off, right close to the eye. And then going to finish tying the head and whip finish it with it in this position. So I want to get that head built up with the nano silk. And then we'll give it a touch of super glue. Get that drip down into the wraps there. And then finish it with the whip finish. And we've got one dandy darner dragonfly nymph here that will fish anywhere you want it. Just check my focus there. Make sure I get a good look. You get a good look at it. So like I said, you can cast that out on your type 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sinking line. Whatever you need to reach the depths of the shoal you're fishing on. And throw it down there, let it sink, and then walk it across the bottom. It's a real bottom walker. It's a great one for the big trout who are looking for a mouthful. And like I said, I've used it to great effect on smallmouth bass here on the island as well, because you can fish it right into the logs and the rocks and the weeds down there where they're looking for a mouthful. Those silly legs bounce back and forth with the pull in the water when you're stripping it in, and that beard of moose mane keeps it from snagging up very much. I've rarely lost one of these on the bottom with it like that. So if you enjoyed this video, please, if you haven't done so, consider subscribing, and you're welcome to share it with your friends. I'm wishing you tight lines and good luck. Thanks for watching.